Right, good morning everybody. We're going to make a start on the next session. Sorry to interrupt all your conversations. Hopefully you've all got a coffee and whatever else was out there. So next, I mentioned earlier that actually lots of bits of England, lots of combined strategic authorities are getting more powers and responsibilities relating to learning skills and employment, as well as different bits of the UK. So we're going to hear from some of those different perspectives and challenges and approaches now with our expert panel. So we have Anne-Marie Sayinka, who's the Assistant Director of Skills and Employment at the GLA. We have Adam Swirsky, who's the Interim Director of Skills and Employment at the East Midlands Combined County Authority. Presumably very pleased with the shout out for Loughborough-based businesses we got from Devon earlier. Helen Dern, who's the Interim Executive Director for Employment, Skills, Health and Communities at the West Midlands Combined Authority, and Nick Whitten-Dowd, who's the Assistant Director at the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. And to chair them all and lead the discussion off, I'm very pleased that we have Heather Stewart, the Economics Editor at The Guardian. So Heather, over to you.
Thank you very much, and you've done the very difficult bit of remembering all the complicated titles that I've scrolled down here. So that's all good. That's the most difficult bit done. Welcome everyone. As Stephen says, it's a really interesting moment. We've got a government that has this agenda of raising the employment rate to 80%, which is obviously more challenging in some areas than others, but they're quite keen to have combined authorities take a greater role in that. And you know, we've got, as you well know, lots of sort of patchwork of different levels of responsibility in devolution. So it's great to actually be able to talk to people, some of the people who are trying to make this happen. And there's other bits of the government agenda too. The industrial strategy came out last week, and that talks about having workforce strategies for particular sectors and in particular parts of the country. And as we know, and as you'll see from the headlines today, there's also benefit reform going on, controversially. So there's lots of different strands of what this government is trying to do, which, combined authorities, the government hopes, will have a really important role in. Overhauling the role of job centres is another piece of that puzzle. So I'm really interested to hear from some of these experts on the ground about how you go about that and the challenges and how it differs in different parts of the country. So maybe we'll sort of come this way, if that makes sense. Adam, shall we kick off with you? So tell us what's the picture like in the East Midlands, and what are the sort of challenges you're having to confront?
Yeah, brilliant. And for those of you who don't know, East Midlands Combined County Authority was set up last year. So it actually covers Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire, and Derby and Nottingham, not Leicestershire. I already had this conversation with Devon this morning. I had to, but it's okay because Devon has got some good connections to the Emka region as well. So we're okay on that one. So we're getting up to speed. Our devolution of adult skills is happening in August. We've got a youth guarantee trailblazer that's being implemented. But part of the, I think, sort of prelude to this session was around how we're all contributing to inclusive growth. And our mayor's put inclusive growth at the heart of her agenda. She set up an inclusive growth commission that's being chaired by Andy Haldane at the RSA. And at the heart of that is this concept, which they're calling the opportunity escalator. It's really thinking deeply about how are we taking people, residents of our region, on that journey to take advantage of the opportunities that are going to come from those big growth sectors, the ones the government set out in the industrial strategy, but also the ones that we've put at the heart of our local growth plan, making sure that people have the skills and the access to support so that they can benefit from those opportunities, and thinking about how they then can progress and go up the pay scale and get those high quality jobs. So that's really the sort of centerpiece of what we're trying to achieve across everything we do. And skills and employment has just a massive role to play in feeding through to so many of those elements. I think just the other thing I'd throw in is that, I'm very conscious of the things that we can do directly as a combined authority versus those things that we need to do with partners. And we do have some really significant powers. We do have some really good funding streams that are coming down the track. But actually, there's much more that we need to do with our partners than we can do on our own. Yesterday, I was in Nottinghamshire, launching with our mayor something called the Fusion of Skills Collaborative, which is our partnership with the UK Atomic Energy Association to provide the skills needed for the fusion industry that's going to be based out of North Nottinghamshire with the first fusion plant in the UK and one of the only ones in the world. So that's an example of us bringing together lots of partners, working with UK Atomic Energy Association to try and deliver the skills for people in the region to benefit from that significant growth. I think those are some of the opportunities that we can do as a combined authority.
Interesting. Okay. And Anne-Marie, the GLA is obviously in quite a different place on this sort of devolution journey or track. What's your role? What's the GLA's role, and what will you be able to do you think, as part of this sort of project of inclusive growth?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to today's conference. London is in a different place. So we've had the adult skills budget devolved to us since 2019. But obviously, we went straight from it being devolved to us into a pandemic where a lot of people, the landscape changed a lot, and we had to really act quickly to support people to be able to engage with skills and employment in that period, and to really, assign funds to be able to support people to access laptops, to be able to access devices, to be able to join things online. And so the picture of skills provision changed drastically in the years after we were given the funding. Also, I think London had enjoyed a period of high productivity up until like 2008. And then we've seen our productivity really, really dip since 2008, where we've had, I think, an average productivity growth of about 0.12% over the last 10 years or so. And so for us, a key priority is really looking at how we can improve productivity in London going forward. And so in February, we published the London Growth Plan, which is a plan that we co-developed with London councils and with various partners across business, skills and employment support, to really look at where we see the opportunities for growth in London, particularly the sectors, a lot of which align with the industrial strategy sectors that have been announced by national government, but also looking beyond that to say, right, how do we make sure that Londoners are really well equipped to access the jobs that we hope to be created in these sectors? And so in London, we've already kind of been looking over the last few years at how we can support provision in particular sectors. We've set up what we call the Mayor's Skills Academies, which are sector-based partnerships between skills providers and employers that really are looking at our curriculum to make sure that the courses that are provided are fit for purpose and are addressing the skills needs of employers. And we know that also, even though we have a lot of wealth in London, there's a lot of inequality in London. We know that the lowest 10% of earners in London earn 39% less than the lowest 10% of earners nationally. And so there is a lot that we need to do to make sure that those who are further from the labour market are really supported to access the opportunities that there are in London. And so a key part of that is the development of what we're calling an inclusive talent strategy in London, which we're currently working on. And that's really looking at how we better integrate the system, how we integrate health support, employment support, skills provision, along with other barriers to employment like childcare, like the affordability of living in London, and those other things that are key barriers for us to retain talent and skills in London. And we're looking to launch that in the autumn, and that is a big part of like what we see as really making sure that the system is joined up. It's easy for people to navigate. It's easy for employers to navigate as well, and they can also see where they can get the support that they need to upskill their existing staff. And so I'll stop there. I'm sure you'll ask more questions.
No, it's great. Loads going on, obviously. Nick, do you want to tell us about the Picturing Greater Manchester? I know you do some interesting things marrying together sort of health and work support, because once went and visited one of those projects quite a long time ago. But you know, what are the challenges and what are the sort of powers that you have to make a difference?
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, Greater Manchester, we are one of the older, maturer, I think I'll come back to, given the comment earlier this morning. We're a maturer combined authority. We were formed in 2017. We've also had the adult skills budget since 2019, but we've also had devolved / delegated employment support programs for well over 10 years, with things like the Work and Health programme and another of other things that have come and gone over the years. I think we're very much a city region of two halves, really. We've got a population of just under 3 million, and we've got huge areas of deprivation within that. But we are also one of the fastest growing economies in the UK, in Greater Manchester. And just as colleagues have said, it's how do we capitalise on that for our residents, for our communities. So yes, inward investment is important, but how do we support our residents, our people, to grow and attract and get into those jobs with the right support and the right skills? We've got a 71-ish% employment rate. Our mayor has committed that we will hit 80%. So that's a big challenge. It's a huge challenge with 25% of our working age population economically inactive, and over 160,000 of those economically inactive due to ill health. And I will say, I hate the phrase economically inactive, and we are desperately trying to find an alternative. So if anyone has any answers on a postcard, please let me know, because we really do want to shift the language on that. So I think our real big focus in Greater Manchester is on the prevention agenda. You may be aware of the Mayor's Live Well ambitions and Live Well campaigns, but it's also on growth, and it's about health improvements, and it's about how do we get that system alignment across skills, employment and health and change, so that we stop having a patchwork quilt of provision and we actually have a single response to the barriers that our residents are facing.
Interesting. Helen, tell us about the West Midlands.
So good morning, everybody. So the West Midlands, I think it's fair to say that the West Midlands challenges are pretty well documented. We usually appear on the news for one reason or another most days. But what I just wanted to outline to you a couple of key facts. So the West Midlands Combined Authority is actually made up of 7 local authorities, Birmingham being the largest of those, but we also have Wolverhampton, Sandwell, Dudley, Walsall, Solihull and Coventry. When you see the West Midlands data, you might see things like 74% employment rate. Well, actually, across the 7 local authorities that I work with, it is actually 69%. And that we've got 26 out of every 100 working age adults in the West Midlands who are now not working because they are inactive and consequently are not even looking for work, do not see that there is a potential for work in their future. For the West Midlands to get anywhere near an 80% employment rate, we're going to have to put nearly 200,000 more people into work in our region. It's an absolutely massive task. And that's why one of the main criteria or the main drivers for us at the West Midlands is how do we convene better the support, the resources that are there, all of the interested parties. You know, look at the size of the number of people in this room. And this is just a fraction of the organisations across England and across our region that want to help and are part of this solution. One of our biggest drivers is actually looking at the amount of duplication that's in the system already and making sure that with the resource that we've got, and I don't just mean at the combined authority level, I mean across the system, the ecosystem, how do we make sure we're getting the best out of that, best value for money for the taxpayer? We also believe quite strongly that that has to come with better systems leadership, and that means bringing not just local government, national government, it means bringing employers, it means bringing the third sector, it means bringing all of the expertise to the table to really understand what is the wicked problem and how do we come around that problem to make sure that the pathways that we're developing for our citizens are going to meet their needs. makes it sound like it's all pretty doom and gloom. But what I would say is, having had this job for a year, what I do see is so much potential. And our growth plan, you know, you're going to hear very similar things, I'm sure, from us today, is very much focused on the scale of the ambition that we can have in the West Midlands. What are those growth sectors? Where are those jobs now and the jobs into the future? And how, as colleagues have said, do we make sure that our citizens are on the right pathways that are going to give them the skills that employers will recognise and then take them into those local jobs? We've been fortunate. We've had some very exciting news over the last few weeks, whether it be around expansions to our tram and rail networks, whether it be about the development of an exciting new sports quarter in Birmingham, whether it be the housing build that we're going to take forward over the next few years. All of that is going to require a pipeline of labour force. And we need some of those 26 out of the 100 that are thinking about work at the moment to want to be part of that solution, because those are going to be good jobs and they're going to make great opportunities, not just for work, but for the communities where our people live. That's one of the reasons why my job title has things like health and communities in it, as well as employment and skills, because as part of our Get Britain working planning, we really want to make sure that we're thinking about the whole system, every citizen's role within that system, and how we can bring, you know, real great minds together to make it work.
And interested, are there different approaches to different age groups? We were talking about that, because if that group that you talked about of inactive, or maybe we would like a different word, we probably would like a different word, presumably have different barriers depending on what stage they're at.
Totally.
You can't have a one-size-fits-all scheme, can you?
Prior to working for the Combined Authority, I worked for DWP for over 40 years. So I've had experience of understanding what it's like from the customer side, from the citizen side, as well as the solution now. And those extent of those barriers are bigger, getting more than they were pre-COVID, and certainly back in the early days. So whether it be housing, whether it be health problems, whether it be debt, addiction issues, there are a full, you know, real range of barriers that our citizens are facing. And our biggest focus in the West Midlands at the minute is more around our young people, because we have the highest rates of youth unemployment in the country.
Interesting. Okay, I've got loads of questions, but I know we've got quite an expert audience, and I'm hoping there might be some questions out there. So would anyone like to? Oh, you're all very shy. Does anyone want to pitch in? Gentleman in the middle there. I don't know if you... Oh, yeah, look at that. There's a mic on its way to you. Brilliant. Let's start there. And everyone else have a think.
Thank you. Mark Dorr from the Skills Network. Skills England have made it very clear that they're going to focus on the industrial strategy in those sectors. It all makes sense in terms of future growth, but actually a lot of the jobs aren't there yet, and there are a lot of jobs in other sectors that exist now, and it just feels like there's a rush to the growth sectors, and we're abandoning care, early years, hospitality, all those areas. How are you managing that balance in your areas?
It's a really interesting question. Present jobs versus future jobs, or does anyone got thoughts about that? Adam, you look keen, I can see.
Well, I think there's a lot to say on this. I mean, one of the things, obviously, Skills England, they've taken the IS 8 for them, but they've also added construction and health and care, I believe, as well as focus. So I think there is some recognition that actually you can't just focus on those sort of high productivity growth sectors. And obviously there's some big investment, particularly in construction skills. I mean, certainly the way we've looked at it in terms of our inclusive growth work is that, you know, we really do want to take advantage of the big growth opportunities, and we have to absolutely make sure that we've got the skills to do so and to attract investment into the region. But equally, you know, over 80% of people are not going to work in those sectors. And so, I mean, lots of terms for what we call the foundational economy is really important, and I still think will play a big role in things like the Adult Skills Fund and other provision. You know, I personally think we put a lot of emphasis on the visitor economy in the East Midlands, and one of the things that's really great about that is that you can live in some quite remote, you know, parts of Derbyshire, for example, and actually have some really good jobs, high quality jobs, you know, and get skills to progress in those in the visitor economy. So I think there is absolutely a role for different parts of the economy to meet different needs.
And I think I would add that we have statutory responsibility to deliver skills up to level 2. So we can never get away from the fact that we will and have to. It's our obligation to do delivery at that end. But I think I've also found over the last few weeks, while all the attention has moved into the growth plans, we do have an accountability to keep reminding our policy colleagues that, you do have to remember that there is this end of the market as well. And that helps, I think, if you drive your decisions by where the vacancies are. So if you've got vacancies, there is plenty of data that tells you what vacancies are available in your labour market. We have to have a response to the needs of those employers as well. So yeah, I think you have to have the balance between both.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Anyone else? I can see. I can't see. There's a lady in sort of lady in red. I'm tempted to say there. What? Oh, yeah. There's a mic coming to you, I think. And there was a gentleman in the middle at the back. Should we take those two? So, yeah. Brilliant. Hi.
Hi. Sorry, I'm Sophie from With You, With Me. We work with a lot of employers on changing the perception of hiring. Going beyond looking at qualifications and exploring skills-based hiring, which lowers that barrier to entry. I'd love everyone's thoughts on your thoughts on skills-based hiring and how we change employers to be looking at skills rather than qualifications.
Interesting. And then there was one in the middle at the back. Oh, well done. Yeah. Hi.
Hello, Ben from ALP. And I think what's really important, I think we all agree that we need to focus on what works when we are delivering these vital programs to address the really important needs that you all described. Some of my members, my independent training provider members, are worried that there is too strong a reflex in the devolved authorities towards certain institutions because they are seen as local institutions as opposed to focusing the money on those programs and those providers who are actually delivering the best outcomes. Adam, I know you're in the middle of all this at the moment, but it would be interesting to hear, generally speaking, whether people on the panel recognise that there's a mix of provision which they need to cherish, as opposed to just going to the FE college, which shares the name.
Two interesting ones. I think the skills-based hiring is part of a slightly wider issue, I suppose, which is what's the role of employers here, isn't it? How do you can do things from your end, but how do you make sure that employers are aware of what's available and accommodate people? But yeah, two there: skills-based hiring and providers. Yeah, so we go for it.
Yeah, just on skills-based hiring. I think there's been some really good work done in London where we. Training providers have partnered with employers and actually brought them in as people are being trained up and given opportunities for placements, and hiring has been based on actual seeing what the person can do rather than just waiting for looking at qualifications. I think looking at examples of best practice like that and how we can kind of build on that and share that out will help to address some of that issue. And I think working with employers, so part of our inclusive talent strategy is looking at how we shift to a more employer-led system, and that is thinking about how we actually work with employers to make sure that they are inputting into the training of people and into the curriculum of the skills curriculum so that it delivers what they need. As part of that, we're asking in return that employers look at their recruitment practices. And so in London, we've done lots of work around the Good Work Standard. We've done lots of work with our wide WIN network around looking at how employers actually recruit, looking at tools to support employers to recruit better. And I think things like that will help to shift to a more skills-based hiring process.
Interesting. And anyone else on that one? And then we'll talk about institutions and...
No, shall I pick up on the providers?
Go for it.
I'll just put one little bit in about skills-based. So, though on a small scale, we have been working on an offer called Path to Apprenticeship over the last year, which brings together private training providers and employers and young people to understand through a period of on-the-job engagement, talking to young people about what that apprenticeship would entail, really employer-led, has led to far more young people without the core qualifications moving into taking apprenticeships, particularly in construction, as a way of engaging the employer that maybe your way of approaching apprenticeships isn't going to work for you, because there's all of this pool of talent out here that you're excluding because they don't meet the core recruitment process that you have in place. And we're looking to expand that as part of our trailblazer over the next year into other sectors as a way of bringing more young people into the apprenticeship programme. But I think more of that kind of testing with employers will prove and set a standard for others to follow, I think.
It's really interesting. So you're sort of putting people in front of the employers and saying, have you thought about this?
Why
almost?
not?
Yeah, and why not? Yeah, exactly. And okay, so Nick, on the providers issue.
Yeah. So I absolutely agree that I think there needs to be a blend of providers delivering a blend of provision. And in Greater Manchester, we want the best providers, and lots of them bring different things. So you mentioned the colleges and things. Well, actually, we see our FE colleges as anchor institutions. They're much more than just a deliverer of qualifications. They are a place, and I think there's there's an opportunity for them to grow and do more in that kind of community, place-based anchor institution. But absolutely recognise that we need that specialist provision that independent training providers can quite often bring. We have a fantastic, strong network in Greater Manchester that we really value, are very much involved. And that the members of that are both locally based and some nationally based providers that are bringing different things. Again, it's that sort of specialist skills from large national providers, but also for a more local provider, it's bringing the local connections, the local business connections, the work with SMEs that they all do. And I think the same is true across into employment support. So I know the question came perhaps more from a skills perspective, but it's very similar in employment support, and it's understanding who is best placed to pick that up. And actually, we have a really strong push for working a lot more with voluntary sector and community organisations, which is really important. And I think when you're talking about that holistic package of support that can move people much closer and then into work, those locally based, community-based organisations, they are best placed to provide that wraparound support for those individuals, but they may not have the expertise and the experience of working with very specific or specialist employment or skills provision, actually, that moves people forward and into the jobs that we're all chasing.
I really agree with Nick about the need for the blended provision, and Ben is doing his job very well. If there was a colleague here from the Association of Colleges, they might have a different view as well. But I think Stephen is really good at reminding us that one of the challenges that we all face in the skills and employment world is that there are a range of outcomes we're trying to achieve. So of course we want people to get into work, to get progression, better quality jobs. We're also trying to drive inclusion. We're trying to overcome disadvantage and inequality. We're trying to work with our anchor institutions. So we want to be really explicit about that, because we want to be very outcomes focused. But it is important just to recognise that range of outcomes that we're trying to balance.
Absolutely. We could take two more, I think. There's a gentleman here, and there's a lady there just in front of the woman with the mic. Yeah, just there. Brilliant.
Hi, Julie Leonard with Shaw Trust. We talk a lot about the role of the SMEs as part of this process to get more people into work. What are you seeing working well in terms of incentivize SMEs and supporting them to create work placements, supported internships, and actually employment?
Interesting. Yep, and gentleman here.
Thanks, Akil Ahmed from Islington Council. You mentioned the need for growth, and in London, the inclusive talent strategy, and Adam, you mentioned the need to get local people involved. The growth that we want is inclusive growth for the right people, and very often, as we saw this morning from one of the participants in the panel discussion, we want people who are generally maybe overlooked, either due to age or disability. What strategies and what engagement models have you seen that work effectively in engaging those who are the furthest from these exciting opportunities work?
Great, two very high quality of questions. Should we take the SMEs? Has anyone got good examples of where things have worked well with SMEs?
I mean, for me, so I started at the GLA running an apprenticeship program that was about supporting SMEs who have never taken on an apprentice before. And what really worked then is because is the reason why most SMEs hadn't taken on an apprentice was just because they don't have the capacity to do all of the work in preparing for that and in setting things in place. And what we actually did was say, right, we'll take a lot of that work away from you and make it as easy as possible for you to do this so that you can then take someone on. And that was really successful in taking on thousands of new apprentices in London. So I think what we really need to get right in supporting SMEs is how do we make it as easy as possible for them to get involved? Many of them want to get involved. Many of them want to offer the opportunities. It's how do we make it as easy as possible for them to do that?
Okay, any other thoughts?
And I think just the case studies, the peer-to-peer. SMEs listen to other SMEs. They don't listen to policymakers. And I think it's really important to enable that and to facilitate that sharing of knowledge and experience between them through our employer, the business representative organisations and things, to step away from perhaps them feeling like they're being told this is a good thing to do, to actually feeling it's a good thing to do.
I do think it's one of the most untapped opportunities that we've most probably got in the West Midlands, because the majority of our employers are SMEs, and they are the supply chain of all of those big organisations that are making your car or whatever. Right. So I think there's a long way to go in making sure that SMEs feel engaged in the skills strategies that we've got, but also can access it, as colleagues have said, in a very easy way. I had a guy come and do some work at my house recently, and he went, "How do I get an apprentice then?" Well, you have to do this, and you might have to do that. And you could see in his face, I don't think I want to do that. So we do have to find easier ways through the system for our SMEs, I think.
Interesting. And those hard to reach people, finally, how do we, what works for the hardest to reach people, the people furthest from the labour market?
I think it's about not expecting those people to come to us. It's about finding and working with the organisations that are already connecting with those people and supporting them. I mentioned earlier the VCFSE sector. That's where those people can be found, and those are the trusted people that those individuals might have connections with. And they may not be connecting with them because they want a job, because a job or to improve their skills is absolutely the last thing on their list, because the list is this long in front of it. So it's about connecting, finding ways to connect with people, helping address those system barriers that they are facing, and gradually building their confidence, building their resilience that takes them closer to being ready to have a job conversation.
And there might be a health piece of that, presumably.
Absolutely.
As well as a
normally
sort of
is, one
job,
way or another.
Right, as well as a sort of job readiness or...
I mean, just to build on Nick's point, I mean, I think what's one of the most exciting opportunities at the combined authority level is I think that we have the ability to bring together the health, work and skill system in a way that no other bit of level of government does. And we can have those conversations with our partners because, exactly as you say, Nick, we want to engage people who are not necessarily coming to a job centre or walking through a local authority service. They might be with their housing association, they might be talking to their clinician. There's a whole, or voluntary, all engaged with the voluntary sector. So we have that ability to convene that group and really think about what does a coherent system that is centred around the person look like. And I think that's the best hope that we have for bringing those people into the system.
Brilliant. The little red numbers are telling me that that we're about to run out of time. I'm not quite sure what happens when it runs down to zero. But that's been really, really good questions and I feel we could probably go on for at least another hour, but really good discussion. So perhaps we could thank the panel, Adam Swersky, Anne-Marie Soyinka, Nick Whittendowd and Helen Dern. Thanks ever so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, huge thanks to Heather and to our panel. After lunch, we're going straight into workshops and there's a chance to talk further about some of those local approaches and taking a really practical approach about how providers and institutions can work with combined authorities, and other workshops again in your programmes about the youth guarantee, about employer investment in skills, which I mentioned earlier, and also local approaches to employment support, which includes those Jobs Plus pilots that I talked about as well. Then we're all back in here for a star-studded panel on better work, followed by top of the policies, when you've got a chance to vote for your favourite new policy idea, which will be pitched to you Dragon's Den style, and there are prizes. So this is my attempt to hook you in for the rest of the afternoon. But in the meantime, we're going to go for lunch. Please do go and visit the exhibitors whilst you're out there as well, and then on to your workshops. But in the meantime, please just give one last round of applause for Heather and for our panel.